Greetings. It's a fine day for learning. Can I help you?
Inside the Brotherhood of Steel's bunker Lost Hills, there's a character named Vree. While she can still be found and spoken to, her original purpose was to give the player a quest to find a traitor in the Brotherhood's ranks named Kedrick. Kedrick was either never implemented or deleted, as the only remnants of his existence are unused messages in Vree's text file. Once you discovered his nefarious intentions to kill the Brotherhood elders and open the Brotherhood's bunker to invading super mutants, the player could tell Vree, "I've got some important news to tell you about Kedrick. He's a traitor." She would doubt the player and reply, "Kedrick, he's been a loyal member of the Brotherhood forever. I doubt you would even know what that means." To which the Vault Dweller could say, "Yeah, I do. Kedrick is a traitor and planning to overthrow your leaders." Vree would then ask for evidence of his betrayal, stating, "Do not bother me with innuendo. Bring proof to the High Elder or say nothing of this." It's unknown what evidence the player would have uncovered, but after finding it, you could bring it to Head Paladin Rhombus. At this point, Vree would believe the Vault Dweller and tell you, "Do what must be done. Stamp out the heresy and remove those responsible for the stain." Presumably at this point, the player would need to kill Kedrick to save the Brotherhood elders from being murdered. If you didn't kill Kedrick within 170 days of starting the game, the Master of Super Mutants would invade Lost Hills and destroy it. The map for this outcome still exists and is amusingly named Bro Dead internally. It can still be easily accessed since the developers left a recording mode in the game that was used to make promotional footage. This menu can be accessed by pressing Ctrl-R on the main menu screen, and it depicts Lost Hills completely destroyed. In-game dialogue was recorded for this situation, and an ending slide was even made, but due to the quest being cut, the ending was subsequently cut as well.
The Brotherhood of Steel repels the first wave of mutant invasion, but a traitor in their midst causes the Citadel to fall. Fortunately, the advanced technology is mastered slowly by the mutants, and they were unable to use it against you.
There's an unused holotape named Brotherhood of Steel Honor Code, and it was made by Maxon II, the son of the founder of the Brotherhood, Roger Maxon. It details an alternate version of the Brotherhood's exodus from Mariposa military base, and its description reads, "A holotape with a rough symbol of the Brotherhood of Steel inscribed on it. Use the tape to transfer the data to your Pip-Boy. Once loaded onto the Pip-Boy, the Holodisk would give the player the following message." Quote, Maxon's history. "My father was a security guard at a secret military base in the desert of Southern California. A typical MP, I remember mostly his strength. When it came time for the revolution, I respected his convictions. He stayed behind to help those who were disabled and wounded, even the scientists. He put the well-being of myself and my mother into the hands of his best friend and ordered us into the desert with the other rebels. We, very few, marched into the waste. The only thought on my mind was that I would never see my father again. He knew that to stay behind was death, and still he stayed. He respected the flag, the commander-in-chief, and the badge that he wore. What an idiot. He died for the sins of others. This will never happen again to us. We will become self-sufficient. We will become keepers of knowledge and lore. We will survive to the end of civilization. We will take responsibilities for our actions, and we will hold accountable the actions of others. This I pledge to you, Maxon, my son. The Brotherhood of Steel is justly named. We're a brotherhood. Unlike my father, we will stand back to back with those that share our convictions and beliefs. We are steel. We are hard. We have been sharpened to an edge. Always remember the fires that we were forged in. Never forget. The motto from a previous time and our motto now." Unquote. This was almost certainly cut because it conflicts with the Brotherhood's history, as Roger Maxon didn't stay behind at Mariposa to help the wounded in the final game. Instead, he led the other survivors to Lost Hills, but regardless, this cut entry provides an interesting look at an earlier iteration of the Brotherhood's backstory. There's a cut Brotherhood initiate named Brenden. It's unknown why he was cut because his remaining dialogue is genuinely interesting, but perhaps the developers thought he'd confuse players about the faction's lore. When looking at him, you'd get the message. You see a stern young initiate with a book. While speaking to him, you could ask him about the book and he'd reply, "Actually, it is a journal that I am keeping. I am working on a treatise on the social dynamics of the Brotherhood." The player could then note, sounds interesting. At which point he'd say, "Indeed, I've been researching information about our predecessors from before the war and about the societies of the outside world. I think that the Brotherhood comes closest in organization to the Knights Templar of the so-called Dark Ages." The Vault Dweller could inquire about the Knights Templar, and Brenden would state, "According to my research, the Knights Templar were a military brotherhood which focused upon the acquisition of wealth and knowledge. Although they had some religious overtones in their structure, their quest for knowledge ultimately made them a secular organization. I think that they would have been a more theocratic organization if they had had a greater interest in wealth and power, since the church of that era was primarily involved in control of gold and land." Then you could ask, and how does this relate to the Brotherhood? Brenden would reply, "We must understand our past if we were to recognize our directions for the future, but I'm sure you wouldn't understand that." Next you could say, "Why did you decide to study this?" Brenden would reply, "Although the Brotherhood places a high emphasis on hard sciences and applications technology, there has been little in the way of research into the soft sciences, like psychology and sociology. For a well-rounded education, we must apply scientific thought to all endeavors." Another dialogue option was, "So what have you discovered?" I've come to the conclusion that the Brotherhood functions mostly like a pseudo-religious organization. We have the strong military hierarchy combined with codes of honor passed down from our ancestors. Combine this with our technical skills, and I think that there are two paths of development for the Brotherhood: a techno-religious dictatorship or a benevolent research society. Finally, you could ask him, what could influence the development of the Brotherhood? Ultimately, we have a command hierarchy, with the elders at the top. The most influential positions, then, are the elders and the high elder. A charismatic high elder could direct the Brotherhood almost completely. We need to be careful to make sure that we have a leader who is both strong and visionary. Thankfully, I think that General Maxson fits that description. There's another cut paladin named Farli, and his name is an homage to a character of the same name in Interplay's 1995 RPG Stonekeep. He only has a few lines of dialogue that were implemented, but they seem to imply that he had low intelligence or was perhaps a tribal. It's unclear if he was simply a minor character that was cut because he didn't add much to the experience, or if he was intended to be more and was left unfinished. Finally, there was a small cut quest where the Brotherhood Quartermaster Michael would ask you to find pulse grenades for another member of the faction. After asking if he needed help, Michael would have replied, "Well, actually, Sophia has been in need of some pulse grenades, but I haven't had the chance to run them down to her yet. Do you think you could run them down for me?" If the player sold, dropped, or used the grenades before delivering them and returned to Michael, you could say, "I lost them. Can I have some more?" To which he'd reply, "Likely story. I knew I shouldn't have trusted someone like you." If the player tried speaking to him again, he'd say, "I can't believe you'd show your face around here again. I hope the grenades were useful. You're never getting anything from me again. I don't care who supposedly gives you authorization." Instead of telling him the grenades were lost, you could also taunt him by saying, "Ha, you thought I would actually deliver it? You're dumber than you look." This would result in the Brotherhood becoming hostile and the following message: "Guards, we have a thief. Show him what we do to those who betray the Brotherhood." If you successfully delivered the grenades to Sophia, she'd tell you, "Thank you very much. It was nice of you to drop these off. My research would have been delayed without them. It's good to see we have such a trustworthy initiate. I knew getting an outsider wouldn't be a bad decision. If you go see Michael, he will have something for you." The player would then return to Michael and he'd welcome you, stating, "Why, hello again. Sophia says you delivered the grenades. That was very kind of you. She is working on a better version and needed to see if the circuitry was compatible. For completing the quest, you'd receive 250 experience and an unknown reward, perhaps a weapon considering Michael is the base's quartermaster." On one hand, the dialogue in this quest is entertaining, but on the other, it didn't really add all that much, and I can definitely see why it was eventually scrapped. The Brotherhood was partially inspired by Walter Miller Jr.'s post-apocalyptic novel A Canticle for Leibowitz. The novel takes place in the southwestern United States after the world was destroyed by a massive nuclear war. The survivors of the war, many of whom have been horribly mutated by radiation, have an understandable hatred for the technology that caused the apocalypse and kill anyone who's particularly intelligent. This backlash becomes known as the Simplification, and soon nearly all traces of modern civilization are lost. Later, the Simplification extends to anyone who can even read, and books are routinely burned, resulting in illiteracy becoming commonplace. A survivor and former electrical engineer named Isaac Leibowitz seeks refuge from these murderous mobs and finds sanctuary in a Cistercian monastery. There he becomes a priest and dedicates his life to preserving books by smuggling them back to the church. At his request, the monastery creates an order dedicated specifically to this purpose, called the Albertian Order of Leibowitz. Later, Isaac is betrayed and killed, but the order continues to preserve knowledge for thousands of years in the hopes of bringing salvation to future generations once mankind is ready. Just in this short synopsis, you can see many of the themes of the Brotherhood of Steel, though notably the Brotherhood aren't altruistic and instead hoard technology for their own benefit. They were also heavily inspired by a faction from the 1988 RPG Wasteland, the game that followed as a spiritual successor to. In an interview, designer Scott Campbell revealed, "I do love how these guys eventually turned out, but their origins were not very original. I simply wanted a group exactly like the monks from the Guardian Citadel in Wasteland. This was one of my favorite parts in the original game. An old, isolated stone fortress whose robed monks wielded insane energy weapons and would blast any trespassers." Fantastic. The Brotherhood was intentionally the same post-apocalyptic religious order that existed to keep the technologies of the old world alive. However, unlike the nihilistic guardians of the Wasteland, I really wanted the player to be able to befriend and join up with this group and grab all of their awesome gear, of course. In keeping with the medieval monk themes, the Brotherhood became more of a knightly order with a distrust of outsiders, rather than a coven of crazy zealots. Although this did make them similar to concepts in Gamma World, the Knights of Genetic Purity, and Warhammer 40k, the Imperial Tech Cults. I just love the idea of high-tech knights in power armor wielding vibro swords and Gatling lasers. Total fan service to me. Some of these changes would have made Fallout into an even better game. Ultimately though, all of this was left on the cutting room floor.